5 true prepping stories. These stories have been sent in by subscribers or by friends of mine. If you would like to share your story, please consider posting on my subreddit page. I hope you enjoy these stories. Story 1. Prepping Weirdo. So I don't know how I got into this. I decided I wanted to get used to the idea of being able to survive if something ever happened. Things are uncertain and seem to be growing ever more so, especially with the current global issue going on lately. I thought it would be a good idea to be prepared, just in case, you know? Anyway, because of my social anxiety, I decided to use the internet in order to find some groups and see what was out there. Some of the groups seemed a bit off, almost cult-like with how the members behaved, and I didn't want to get involved in anything like that. I wanted to find a group that was friendly, supportive, and, well, sane. Finally, I found one that looked okay. I joined, gave some vague information about myself, and said I was a 23-year-old female, and that I didn't have any experience in this sort of thing. There was the added bonus of the forum being based in the country I live in rather than the US or another country. I got several messages welcoming me to the forum and links to some handy guides, mostly about the rules of the forum, some safety guides, and some basic get-out bag sort of thing. I had a lot of reading I needed to do. I was surprised at how friendly everyone was. I expected them to be standoffish with me until they knew I was serious about it. There were several dead accounts from people who had disappeared off the forum, either going inactive or I have no idea. One of the forum moderators sent me a PM asking me if I needed help, and strangely, whereabouts I lived. Not a general idea or state, but my actual address. The internet was still pretty new at the time, and I was fairly young, but I knew not to give away my private information. I thought this was weird and said I just wanted to have a look around and get to know people in the forum first. Because I was young, I wasn't aware that I should have gone for help right away. I didn't want to be accused of stirring trouble on the internet, and looking back, I should have contacted one of the other staff members about it. I learned about some of the plants in the local area that could be used for food or medicine, how to preserve food, and how to look for water in a dry climate. It was fun. I made posts every now and then and found myself browsing the forum regularly, even if I didn't necessarily post anything. Occasionally I would DM and chat with some other members on the forum, and they seemed okay. I wasn't really interested in making friends on there. Every so often he would message me out of the blue to check in on me. I told him I was fine, and I'd made friends with a couple of the older ladies on the forum. They told me to be careful on here, but I didn't say anything about the moderator. Again, mainly because I didn't want to seem like I was causing trouble. And I wanted to keep him at arm's length. He didn't seem so bad. Really? As I posted more on the forum, I began to realize I wanted to learn more about homesteading, but it had some handy hints and tricks. I suppose some people would call me a bit of a poser when it came to the more hardcore members of the forum. But I became more active on the forum. It became part of my daily routine to log in, post, read the current threads. The moderator began to DM me all the time now. The first couple of days I would answer and tell him that I was okay, but I ended up telling him that I was busy. It started getting too intense. Far too intense. One day he sent me a message and it went like this. Hey blank, you need to be careful. The government is seeking to control more and more. I won't be on this forum as often as I used to be. I think they're tracking me. Can you meet me? And he put down an address. After I got the message, I remember staring at it for several minutes in surprise. There was no way I was going to meet him. He had gone too far. I answered him and politely said no. Given the way he would behave sometimes, I can understand why the government would want to get involved. The next message from him was instantly hostile, and it was a range of threats, desperate cries, and more typos than I could count. I decided not to answer this one. By this point, I spoke to one of the women I became friends with. She wasted no time contacting the admin about it. His account was banned and deleted. And I heard I wasn't the only young woman on the forum he'd been contacting with, in hopes of creating a harem or something. I was surprised, but at the same time, not that surprised either. I guess I learned to be more careful on the site, on the internet in general, and that there are creeps everywhere. I'm not really into prepping anymore, and I decided to stay away from it. Story 2. Online Concern. I was really into prepping for the apocalypse a couple of years ago. I loved watching all the different prepping channels on YouTube, the shows on Netflix, and it was something I've always been interested in. I didn't want to depend on anybody. I really got into it. I was part of several online and offline groups as well, where we would talk about it, share what we knew, and occasionally some of the posts got pretty weird. There were a lot of nice people there too, homesteader types who wanted to be self-sufficient and wanted to live off the grid. There were also hippies, people who wanted to downsize, people who wanted to save a lot of money, more survivalist types, those sorts of things. It was very much a mixed bag. Every so often they would have events where people would network, sell goods, and you could take classes. It was more like a fun family day, and I think that was part of the appeal for most people. I was talking to one of the older ladies about native plants that could be used for healing when one of the guys came up. I recognized him from some of the forums and from some of the local events. He was a massive neckbeard, and I smelled him before I could see him. I turned and smiled a hello, before I turned back to listen to the rest of what the older lady was saying. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see that he was frowning and had folded his arms in agitation, but I wasn't paying attention to him. So, naturally, I focused even more so on the older woman, both in hopes of getting under his skin and actually wanting to hear more. I ended up buying her book on native plants, and she was distracted by another customer, and as she was distracted by another customer, and I was stuck with the neckbeard. I gave him a polite yet awkward smile and turned to walk away. He said, "You know, she won't be much use when shit hits the fan." Oh, shit hits the fan is some of the lingo that preppers use about the end of the world. I was shocked about this. The old lady was friendly and had a heap of knowledge about things. I snapped at him not to be rude to her. He made a racist slur about her. She was native and it angered me quite a lot. I told him to shut the fuck up and walked away angry. I didn't want to let this go. I went to speak to one of the organizers of the event. I told him what had happened and he had had other complaints about him. The old lady was well loved and respected by the community, so he was no longer welcome to come, and I heard that he was a creep. Not that he did anything to me. And his views were far, far more extreme than he had told people. It makes me sick. I heard later on that he had started his own group, and it worries me a lot. I heard along the grapevine that he had, or has, 100 or so members now, and that they disappeared into the forest. It turns out that they were white supremacists and wanted to eliminate anyone who's different from them. They wanted to live life in their commune, to prepare for the end of times and live the way they wanted to. So, I guess the neckbeard involved himself in that cult somehow. I honestly worry about the people who may or may not have joined him, and I hope they see sense soon, given his violent and racist tendencies. I hope it doesn't get any worse. Story 3. Facebook Prepper. This was back when I used to frequent Facebook regularly. I mainly keep it to keep up with family and friends who don't want to move on to any other form of social media. And there were some prepping groups on there. I have to admit, I love a good train wreck. There were people in the group who loved to talk about how much they were stockpiling illegal weapons. There were also a lot of conspiracy theories that ranged from the Illuminati to other extreme views. It was kind of funny at the time, and I wish I had been more careful. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have back then. There were some alright people who would tell the crazy people how they were behaving, and one of the cringier admins said that they knew exactly how to find him. The conspiracy theories that went around the group were interesting, and I have to admit I would occasionally troll them. There was a time when there was a dramatic civil war within the group where two of the admins were trying to gain control. I got so many laughs from that group. Soon though, things began to change, and they wanted to form a secret society. A lot of the members expressed they weren't into that sort of thing, and there was a massive exodus of members. Consistently, there would be drama-filled threads that I stayed up until 4 AM reading when I should have been asleep. But I can't help that it was addictive. Oh my god, stomach. One day, I logged in after getting home from work to see even more people had been kicked out or had left. There was a thread that began with, "To the loyalists." I cringed so hard, but I couldn't resist opening it to see what it was about. It wasn't the first time this sort of thing had happened, and I was ready to read many of the comments about it. I wish I had a thought to take a screenshot so I could savor it for later on. It talked about how we were all the ones who knew the truth, that we were the ones who'd be looked after when the time came, and that we all needed to move to a property. There were way too many comments in support of this, and there were no voices of reason this time. I knew it was time for me to leave the group. The comments were unhinged. Many of them said it was time for them to take violence, and for them to take what they wanted. I left the group, rolled my eyes, and began to text my friends about it. They were surprised I was still involved with that group to begin with. I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. So, just a heads up, on Facebook I use an old account, fake name, fake everything, just to keep my identity a secret. I thought it could have been one of my friends, and I asked what was up. It was the leader of the group, and every now and then, I get invitations to come back. I deleted the Facebook account, and I don't answer any calls or texts from numbers that I don't know. And that ended my interest in prepping. Story 4. They will respect me. Hey, so my name is Emily, and I guess I'll tell you how my family became preppers. There was a prepper group that my family became part of. My parents wanted the family to become more self-sufficient, and I was happy about it. First, it started out by saving as much money as possible. My parents wanted to reduce their overall expenses as much as they could. They were always, cheapskates, and didn't want to spend any more money than what they needed to. Sometimes, things were incredibly annoying with how bad they could be. I wasn't excited about the idea of cutting things even more. I expressed my concern to my parents that maybe they were getting way too involved in this. But it didn't matter though. Eventually we moved to a rural area and kept many of the connections with the prepper group. A lot of the people were kinda nuts. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just, really eccentric characters. A lot of the people thought outside the box, and some of them were pretty creative with what they came up with. There were a couple of families, some older couples, and some single people. I was 15 years old at the time. The group would have annual meetups where they would talk about some storage techniques for food. But I think it was just an excuse for a barbecue, and for the adults to drink just, a little bit too much. As I said before, most of the people were pretty friendly and were harmless. There are always, in every group, within our group, there's a small number of them that wanted the group to become more militant. I'm all for teaching self-defense, and in an apocalypse, I think that's pretty important. Especially when so many people would end up becoming violent to try to take what you have. One of the men talked to me and began to ask some pretty inappropriate questions. His friends laughed, and they all clearly enjoyed my discomfort. After being asked my bra size, I walked away, and as I was doing so, I heard them talking about how they would take any woman they wanted. How women would give them the respect that they deserved, or the girl would be fucked up if they didn't. And, perhaps even worse, how things would return to a time when women were considered nothing but property. I went to tell my parents what I experienced. They were understanding and instantly defended me. My dad isn't an aggressive man. He's pretty chill and non-combative. My mum, on the other hand, was something else. She's always had a fiery temper and didn't take shit from anybody. She walked over to those men and demanded to know what the hell they said to me. Also, my mum is 5'2", but in that 5'2", she has nothing but pure fury. They yelled in her face and it attracted more people. They wanted to know what had happened, and finally, it was revealed. And again, there were threats. Fortunately, they were asked to leave before any hands were thrown. I don't think they expected to be called out on their behavior. My parents seemed to be more shaken from the experience than I was. They trusted the community, but even though they had a lot of positive experiences, it really soured it for them. And after a couple of months, my parents decided it wasn't worth it anymore, but kept in touch with some of the other families and members they approved of. The man who had threatened us apparently didn't come to any more events. I never want to see them again. Seriously, if you get involved in this sort of thing, stay safe and make sure you vet people.
I'm a 25-year-old male. I was a bit of a homebody and didn't leave the house very often. After a while, I decided to improve my life and started getting out there more. I got into exercising, eating right, investing and saving money for the future. I was browsing Netflix one day and started watching one of the prepping shows and developed an interest in it. And while this isn't normally something I worry too much about, I'm gay. Most people don't worry about it or don't care. I don't like when people treat me different once they find out, for better or worse. I'm considered straight acting. I bring it up because it's relevant to the rest of the story. I met up with a group of preppers, mainly men, with a couple of their wives thrown into the mix. They were a nice enough bunch. I learned about construction, repairing things, and growing my own food. Even if things didn't go to shit, they were handy skills to have, and my parents never really taught me about this sort of thing. I saw some of these men as father figures. Out of the blue one day, one of them tells me that their daughter was interested in me, and while flattered, and for obvious reasons, I wasn't interested and politely told him that I wasn't into her in that way. He seemed to accept it, and every now and then he would bring it up as a joke. I thought I would try talking to her about it. I was helping her lift some crates when I apologized for turning her down, and I told her I was gay. She seemed taken back by it and asked me why I apologized to her. I told her that her father had tried to set us up together. She rolled her eyes and groaned loudly before telling me that her father was obsessed with finding her a husband before shit hit the fan. Even if I was straight, this would have been way too much for me. She then told me something that made my skin crawl. Her father, who up until now had seemed pretty normal, wanted to create his own society after the apocalypse, and he was serious about it. There was no room for my sexuality. She apologized for him and promised not to tell him about me being gay. She went on to tell me that it was his own brand of Christianity, an enlightened version. Instantly, I knew that I was out. Since then, I've stayed away from these sort of groups, and I don't have any intention of joining any in the future. Given the current global situation and all the lockdowns, however, I had to admit that I had a decent stockpile of goodies I was able to use and share with my local community. So that's one good thing. Anyways, keep an eye out.
I would like to thank my guest. Monsters in My Mind, for joining me in this video. If you liked his contribution, please check him out and subscribe. This video is made with the support of my Patreons. If you would like to join their ranks and gain special perks, consider signing up. I also have a merch store with some amazing designs available. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell too. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.